Hello, this is Joe with joesastrophoto.com. Today we're going to be going over stacking in PixInsight and in Astro Pixel Processor. It's going to be divided up into two videos, and we're going to be joined by Glenn from the Astrobloke channel. So when I first got started in astrophotography, I used Deep Sky Stacker to do all my stacking. Once I moved away from Photoshop as my main editor in astrophotography and started using PixInsight, I went ahead and started to use the weighted batch preprocessing in PixInsight to stack all of my photos. Since I got my ASI 294mm Pro, I was starting to experience some weird issues going on with the PixInsight stacking script, the weighted batch pre-processing. And I called Glenn one day online and I asked him for his thoughts on the matter, and maybe we could troubleshoot it together. And he really only used Astro Pixel Processor for his stacking. He seems to think that it does a much better job than PixInsight, and after I went through the steps of trying to troubleshoot and working with him, and then he showed me the Astro Pixel Processor, I tend to agree with him. And after, not only do the images, the final images, look a little bit better with Astro Pixel Processor, but I'm finding that I have a lot more control in that program, and I also like the fact that the darks and master darks are readily apparent. I called Glenn and we decided that once we had gotten into it, hey, let's record this, make a video for everybody to see what we were doing and talking about. So there's going to be some things in part one in the weighted batch pre-processing that neither one of us really knew about. Now, after I was done, I went back and I looked in, did some research, and I found that in one part of the video I do state that at one point I was able to put all of my flat darks just inside of darks, and it would figure out which ones were which ones were the dark flats or the flat darks or the flat dark flats, as we tend to call them now, and which ones were just the plain darks. And I could not get that to work anymore, and I'm still not getting it to work. And with the new version, it's got a control panel, and when I go in there, it's still telling me that I have issues when I'm trying to load them all in there. So I'm not sure what's going on. I think it's just my version of it. I probably need to uninstall and reinstall, but sit back, relax, enjoy the video. If you've never stacked in PixInsight before or in Astro Pixel Processor, then I hope this really helps, and hopefully it'll help make up your mind as to which one you would want to stack in if you want to move up from the results that you're getting in Deep Sky Stacker.
What do you mean you don't stack in PixInsight, Glenn? I thought pretty much everyone who used PixInsight used that as the stacking program. I feel silly.
No, I,
What are you
I've,
stacking?
I use Astro Pixel Processor, but I started with that program, so I had it anyway, and I moved from Deep Sky Stacker onto that, and then what that lacked in post-processing, PixInsight obviously blows away. So I moved on to PixInsight, but whenever I tried to stack with PixInsight, I always kept coming across problems, and yeah, I just had issues. And then I always got another thing, like with Astro Pixel Processor, it allows you to stack lights, flats, dark flats, or flat darks.
Or dark flat darks?
Dark flat darks. Yeah, let's call them dark flat darks, just to save confusion.
Well,
So
everybody's got their own way of saying it, and the people who like to say it one way get upset with the people who say it the other way. So to be on the safe side and not make anyone upset, let's just call them dark flat darks.
well, I say potato, and you say potato.
No, I say potato.
Do you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Tomato as well.
Tomato.
Hmm.
No, we don't say tomato. We say tomato.
Really, but you say potato.
Yeah, I
What
don't say
sense does that
potato.
make?
I know. Spuds is what we normally say, actually. Anyway, I
On chips.
digress. Yeah. Um, yeah, they so basically, yeah, because it lists all of the different types of calibration frame you could have. So there's bias, there's dark flats or dark flat darks or flat darks, lights, darks. Whereas I found on PixInsight, it only has bias. It doesn't say anything about dark flats or dark flat darks.
Okay, I could show you. Here, why don't I show you? Let's dive into it real quick.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I'd
if you got
really
a
like to
second.
know how to use it, but and
Sure.
then I can show you how Astro Pixel Processor works, and then hopefully
I'd like that.
um,
Yeah,
our audiences can see the two workflows of stacking data, and hopefully get something from it.
that's a good idea. I like that. Let's do it.
Okay, all right, let's do it then. Do you want to do PixInsight first?
Yeah, let's jump in real quick. All right, Glenn. So I've got PixInsight open, and what I normally do after I make sure that I like all of my subs using Blink or B-Link is I go into the batch preprocessing under scripts and weighted batch preprocessing. You
Hmm.
could do all of this manually, but this script is actually does everything just like you would do manually. I see a
Is
lot of
this
people do it
the
both
new
ways.
upgrade that's just come out?
This is, and I'll show you the control panel. It's actually
Oh,
kind of neat
okay, yeah.
because it didn't have the control panel before. The dark flats are the same exact time as the flats. And that way, instead of using bias, we use those. But in order to get around this in PixInsight, all that you have to do is you go to add flats, and then you go to your wherever your flats are. In this case, I've got some here. I'll just take these sulfurs, for instance, and you'll have to do this for each filter. And of course, if you're on color, you just have to do this once. Us mono
Yes.
people have to do it
I,
as many
I think
times
it's
as it
important that
takes.
you mention the difference between bias and dark flats or dark flat darks, because because when I first started, I had a DSLR, and obviously I used to do bias, and I couldn't quite understand what a dark flat was, and anything I read or saw following that, they kind of said they were the kind of the same thing, and I didn't quite understand what they meant by that. And then it wasn't until I got an Astro camera that had a starburst that I realized that bias didn't work. It just wouldn't
Yeah.
stack right, it wouldn't look right, and then that was when I started to do uh dark flats, dark
Yeah,
flat darks.
exactly. So if you have a DSLR, you have to take the bias and then you just
Yes,
use the bias with your darks to calibrate your flats. That's all you're
that's
doing.
right. And
And
if
with
you've
the
got an Astro camera, you go for dark flats, not bias.
right. And
Because
if
that's
you've
what always threw me with PixInsight, because it only asks for bias.
right. Well, and if you've got an Astro camera that doesn't have any amp glow to it, you could still go the bias route. But honestly, the dark flat it takes you're talking seconds per sub. So it doesn't
Well,
take long and it's a lot easier. I think it's better to match your flats and your dark flats.
that's what Nina does automatically. I think
Correct.
Astrophotography tool. I think that
Yeah,
does the same
APT.
as well. If you use the flats tool, it matches your dark flats to your flats in time.
Yeah,
So that's, yeah.
it's a lot easier, I think. But again, with the DSLR, you're going to want to do the bias route, which is fine because all these programs have the bias
Right. Yeah.
in here.
Yeah.
So in order to calibrate your flats, so that you get master flats, basically you add the flats like we just did, and
Mm-hmm.
then we're going to add the darks. And in this case, we're just going to go to the dark flats,
Yeah.
and we're going to pick the same set of sulfur. And this was made in Nina in the Flats Wizard. And then pretty much you're just going to run it just the way it is. You'll pick an output directory, which I just made a little temp output directory. And you could just pick that here. And then you run it. And when you go to run it, it's going to tell you, well, there's no bias frames and there's no light frames, and that's fine. And then you
Because
click, continue, and it'll run. Now I'm not going to click continue at the moment because these files from the 294 are almost,
They're big.
yeah, they're almost 100 meg each, and
Yeah.
so that'll pretty much just freeze up my computer. I need to upgrade. But anyway, what'll happen is after you're done with this, let me open up a window. You're going to get a folder, because I called it temp and or master flats here, and you're going to see the calibrated, the logs, and then your master. And in the master, you'll see that it'll have your master flat in sulfur right here.
Okay.
I'll run it again for oxygen. I'll run it again for hydrogen.
Can I ask on there, Joe? Can you stack those? Can you stack the sulfur, oxygen, and hydrogen at the same time, and it would do all three masters, or will it get confused?
Well, oddly enough, and I don't know when this changed, unfortunately, so I really don't want to give bad information, but at some point, I could come into PixInsight, and I think it was before weighted batch processing. It was just the batch pre-processing script.
Yeah.
And you could put in all your flats, all your dark flats, and all your darks, and all your lights, and it would just do it all. It would make all the masters. Some things changed now, because when I try and put in my dark flats under the darks, it doesn't separate them. You see how here it's got 10.26 seconds, and then it would, and then you'll see the these are the sulfurs, and then down here it would have like 8 point something seconds maybe for the oxygens, and it would separate them, and it doesn't do that any longer. And when I go into the new control panel, you'll see 20 dark frames. So if I put them all in, what it does is it just lumps all the frames together. So for now,
It's not calibrating each different group separately then. So that,
you know, I don't
so you
want
have
to.
to.
I don't think so. No,
Okay. Well,
no.
hopefully, if there is a workaround on that, or is something that we've
Well,
not
I just
we're
do them
not doing,
separately.
somebody can maybe let us know in the comments. That'd be really
Oh,
useful.
that would be fantastic
You
if
know, if
somebody knows.
somebody knows how that works, because obviously it's not. I mean, if you're one shot color, there's no issue at all, because you've only got one set of dark flats anyway.
And that would
It's
work
only
just fine. You can do it all at the same time. You don't have to
yeah,
do this
but
separate.
obviously if you've done an LRGB and narrowband set of data for a target, which we could do with our mono cameras, that adds quite a bit of work in, doesn't it? Because you've got 7 filters there that you're going to have to make individual. I mean, it's not a big job, but you've got, it's a lot of organizing, isn't it, and getting
It's a
the
lot
files
more
in the right place.
organizing. Yeah, I think the times is the same. It's just that it's a lot more convenient if you could just put everything in
Yeah.
and hit
Okay.
play. So this is how you would do the darks, and then the flats. And once I make the master flats, let me show you what we would do. So I'm just going to clear these. And so this is how I would stack. So I would open up the light and I would pick something. So in this case, I think I'll pick this California Nebula. And the nice thing here is I can hit Control A, it selects everything, say open.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that it does show you, like, here's your hydrogen, here's your oxygen, here's your sulfur. And then
That's good.
when we go to the flats on this new version, the old version used to have to tell it to make masters. It's going to read those automatically and tell if it's a master. So I'll come over to my flats wizard folder where I had them all. Okay, and I saved the H and O here. So I'll open those, and you'll see those as well. And then I need to click one more time because I had my.
Does that star next to it show that it's a master? Is that what does that?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And it's
Okay.
also bolded. See, these aren't
Yeah.
bolded. And then on the darks, the first time you run your darks through, especially if you've got a cool dedicated Astro camera, you'll build a dark library. And so the first time you run your darks through, and we'll just add them in here. Let me go to the dark folder. So here's my dark folder, and I've got some 300 second, gain 120, minus 15 degrees Celsius. And we'll just select those. and after it'll actually give you a master, and it'll be in the folder that you tell it to. So now we're going to tell it to go to the California Nebula that I have, and PI, which is, I just make these called PixInsight.
Yeah.
And you can tell I've done this one before. And when you're done, it'll have your calibrated, your logs, your master, your registered. And when you go into the master, and of course there's nothing in there at the moment because it's asking me for a directory, so I can show you after we're done.
Yep.
So now this is ready to run, and when I click run, it's going to tell me that I have no bias, and that's fine.
Interesting. A question I'd like to ask you, Joe, is the number of calibration frames you use.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, in this particular case, I've only got, a handful of lights. I like to try and take as many lights as possible, but I
Yeah.
almost pretty much just standardize on 20 flats, 20 dark flats, and 20 darks. Now,
Okay.
there's no reason why you can't do more. I mean, for people who want to do more, that's great, but there is a diminishing returns.
Yeah, there's a big thread that I once read, and I'll just share what it was basically talking about. And it was saying that for each stage on your calibration frames that you stack, you get a sort of step of improvement, whether it
Right.
be the flat size. And if you obviously everyone starts with one. Yeah, one dark, one flat, one dark flat. Okay, and then the next step is 2, and then it should be 4, 8,
Correct.
16, 32. So really, you're doing 20, but that shouldn't really be any different to 16, because really the next step from 16 is 32.
Well, it's like a half a step better than
Yeah,
16.
but I always think it's a bit like with the cameras when you do your ISO settings. It's exactly the same as that. If whenever you change your
Yes.
ISO, they always say you should stay in the set steps, of 200, 400, 800, 1600, 3200, 6400,
Right.
because
Well, it makes it easier, but you don't necessarily have to.
you don't have to, but I always have,
And
and
that's fine. I
I
don't
found it
see
work.
any.
But when I did quite a lot of tests with calibration frames, I did lots and lots of testing when I had my first Astro camera, and what I actually found was that for me, and I've carried it on through all the time, is that 32 has been a sweet spot. I found that 16 calibration frames darks, whether it be whatever it was, never really quite. You could see a good improvement when you went to 32, but when I went to 64, it like you say, the diminishing returns, it didn't really show much improvement. So for me, 32 was always the sweet spot. It's only interesting to see how people do it differently, and that's just what I just wanted
I
to
like
share what
that. I
I
think
did,
I
because
appreciate that. I'm going to give that a shot. I'm going to actually change my settings to 32 and
you
try
might
them.
just try. I mean, I did tests and I found it made a difference. I did notice
Cool.
the difference, but I didn't notice any real improvement once I went above that.
That's why I love working with you, Glenn. I learn something new all the time. That's
Well, you make me
fantastic.
do all the work and you just sit there and mop up, yeah?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm going to have you edit this whole thing, and then I'm just going to insert it in my video. So
Sounds good to me.
yeah, I get I get something out of it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm absolutely happy with that. Do you want me to show you how the Astro Pixel processor works then?
Yeah, that would be
Should we
fantastic.
do that
I'd love
now,
to
and
see
then,
that.
or do you want to run that, and then we can look at what comes out at the end, and while
Well,
we're doing the Astro Pixel processor?
I actually ran this
Oh, cool.
earlier in the day. So let me show you real quick. Uh, So what you're going to get is the master file, and you're going to see your master dark. So now you can actually copy this and put this in your folder of master darks, and you don't have to spend the time to calibrate
Okay.
and integrate all of those darks every time. But you would just grab your masters, and of course I could just drag them here or
Yep,
go to
you're in
open. But
PixInsight already, yeah.
And real quick, Glenn, do you see this oxygen?
Yeah.
Do you see this halo and this
Yeah.
halo? I gotta tell you,
Is that your ZWO filter? Or
that is the
sorry, your
ZWO filter.
ZWO?
I I'm gonna have a special video where I crush it. I actually have an Astrodon Oxygen 3 coming, and I'm really hoping that the next time we're meeting, and
Yeah, no, it was sort
these
that.
halos are gonna
My
be gone.
chroma filter definitely gets rid of the halos. It makes a big difference. They're nice subs. That's such a nice bit of detail there on the California. That's good.
Yeah,
Where's that HA? Let's have a look. Oh yeah, that's really nice.
pretty nice.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
good. Okay, cool.
This is great. Hey, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and let's get over to Astro
Yeah,
Pixel
sure.
Processor.
I'll show you how we stack in pixel. I think Astro Pixel Processor is simpler.
As usual, I hope you found that video helpful. If so, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to watch the second part of the video on Astro Pixel Processor stacking.